Hey guys, it's your girl Desiree. You already know what it is. So, I am continuing the whole series of Planning Your 20s, and today I want to talk about traveling and how traveling is so important in your 20s. Now, that doesn't mean you don't travel in your 30s, 40s, or even younger than your 20s with your family or so forth, or maybe even with school, because I was able to do that. I think I was about 17 and I traveled to Italy with my school. So this is obviously not limited to just your 20s. However, in your 20s, that tends to be when you can have more autonomy, more control over where you can go on your own and things of that sort. So I think traveling is really, really great. A lot of times people are secluded only to their neighborhood, especially I mentioned this in the other video about no babies before preparation. I mentioned how like a lot of kids don't get to travel because of their socioeconomic conditions that they're raised in, and this keeps them very limited. So it's the same thing in this video. How some of us, like myself, we have been raised in certain situations where we didn't have as much access to traveling. However, I'm very grateful that I had my godmother who exposed me to the ability to be able to travel, because if it wasn't for her, I'm not sure if I would have been able to do that, at least not at an earlier age. It would have been probably much later in life. So around maybe the age of 8, that's when I started going down to the south and seeing a whole different atmosphere, because I'm currently in New York City. So going down to the south, it's like I loved it. I fell in love with it instantly because I'm the type of person, I'm much more introverted, much more laid back. I love nature, I love quietness. So I was like, man, I don't want to go back to New York City. And every time I would come back here, I would be so upset. I would never be like looking forward to it. And even to this day, every time I travel to other places that tend to be less busy, which is many places, because New York City is one of a kind when it comes to being busy, I never really want to come back because I don't like it here. But eventually, I'll be able to move out of New York City. I just have to become much more focused and get some things in order, especially when it comes to financially. So, but yes, you need to get out of your community. You need to see more of the world. I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to go to Europe when I was younger. I've been to different states in this country, United States. I've been to I actually recently went to Chicago. I've been to Denver, Colorado. I've been to the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. I've been to Georgia. I've been to Florida a few times. I think I went to Rhode Island before. I've been to Boston, which is Massachusetts. I've been to, what is it, Connecticut. I've been to Pennsylvania. Basically, I went to Philadelphia. Atlanta. I've been to Atlanta. I've been to Alabama. Tennessee. How could I forget Tennessee? I've been to Tennessee. Yeah, I don't remember. I've been to Washington, D.C. I've been to Maryland. I've been to many places. I'm probably missing something, but my goal is to go to Texas. Never been to Texas. Never been to Oregon. I want to go to Portland, Oregon. I want to go to Los Angeles, maybe San Diego. I want to go to Arizona. I want to go to New Mexico. I want to go to every state. I know that sounds crazy, but I want to go to every single state. That's my goal. And I also want to go to Jamaica because my family's from Jamaica and I've never been, which sucks. So I want to go to Jamaica. I'm hoping that I'll hopefully be able to go next year, because that would probably be really great because I'm going to be turning 30 next year. So hopefully I'll be able to do that. I want to go to Mexico. I want to go to a lot of the other islands. I want to go back to Europe again. I want to go to Africa. I want to go to Australia. And I want to go to, do I want to go back to Canada? Maybe. Maybe I'll go like to Toronto or Quebec. I didn't really like Nova Scotia too much. Oh yeah, I did go to Canada. I forgot to mention that. I did go to Canada. I went on a cruise. I think was it 2 times? No, I've been to Canada before that. I think it was in high school. And then I went on a cruise. Um, but yes, I went on another cruise and I went to San Juan, Puerto Rico. I went to St. Thomas and I went to Grand Turks and Caicos. So I almost forgot about that. Yeah, so I want to hopefully do another cruise. That should be fun. So my goal is hopefully to live in a place that's much more into nature, much more quiet, much more laid back. That's my goal. So that's why it's important to travel, because when you travel, you get to see more of the world, and you get to see that it's more than just where you are living. If I hadn't been outside of the where I live now, I wouldn't have probably known the possibilities. Of course, I'm a natural person who likes to research, so I would have found out about those things online. However, it's one thing to read about it and to hear about it. It's another thing to actually see it. So it's important to go out there and expand yourself, Mister. Expand yourself, lady, and go out there and travel. Obviously, be safe, be smart, research before you go out there, ask questions. Don't just read the tourism sites, those are great, but also read forums, ask people who actually live there. If you have family that live there, even better. You can have somebody that maybe you can stay with, or at least they'll look out for you because they'll know that you're out there. So obviously, be safe, but don't be afraid to take calculated risk, right? Culture expands your vision and your possibilities. So when you go to different places, even if it's in different parts of your state, because you could probably live in Detroit, or you could probably live in Chicago, or you probably could live in Los Angeles, but you've never been to San Francisco, or if you're in Detroit, you've never been to Ann Harbor. I believe that's, don't quote me. Yeah, I may be wrong. I could really thought that Ann Harbor is a part of Michigan. What was the other state that I said? Chicago, right? I don't know the other parts of Illinois, but it's a big state, right? So there's other parts to see. I've also been to upstate New York. See, I'm forgetting that. I've been to Saratoga. I've been to well, I haven't really actually stopped there, but I've driven through Syracuse, and cause that's when we were like heading up to Canada. So there's so much more to see, and I actually do want to start doing that a little bit more. It's just that it's cold upstate, and I'm just not with cold weather. So yeah, but expand yourself to other cultures, because that will change your view of the world, and also will open you up to different possibilities, especially when it comes to black people. Because a lot of times, I don't always want to use the race thing, but a lot of us are conditioned to think that can only be a certain a certain way. We can only do certain things because we're black, or we're expected to do certain things because we're black, right? But when we start to travel to other places and we see black people in other places, they're like, oh, these black people over here are cowboys, or oh, these black people over here are wealthy. Like, oh, I didn't even know you. Wow, I grew up maybe in this part of Detroit was very poor, and then I went to other parts of Michigan and I saw black people who were lawyers and doctors. So now it makes it more of a possibility that I can be that too. Obviously, we all have different paths. One thing may work for one person, may not work for the other person, but at least it opens up your mind to different possibilities, and you're not as limited as you were before. And then certain conditions humble you. So you might go to another country and it might be very poor. Maybe you're from an area where it's very wealthy. Maybe even if you don't come from a wealthy area, maybe you come from the hood, but you go to another country and their hood is much more poverty there than what you're used to, and you're like, wow, I have it bad here. And it's not to say that you don't still have it bad, but then you go there and it changes your whole perspective. Maybe they don't even have running water there. Maybe they don't even have access to healthcare or different things. So it starts to change your perspective of life in of itself. So sometimes you travel to other places, and even if it isn't like a poor place, it could be a rich place. It could be a wealthy place. It doesn't really necessarily mean that it has to be that experience. But whatever experience it is, sometimes it humbles you. Maybe I might go to parts of the Middle East and I might have to cover my head as a woman. I will see, okay, now I have an idea. Never be able to say I understand because I'm not from there. But now I have more of an understanding of the women there and what they have to, the type of life that they live there and the culture. And then it helps me to have a little more respect for it, because a lot of times Muslim culture, obviously we're going to only hear what we see in the media unless we actually have friends who are Muslim, right? So, and I'm sure there's other cultures who also cover their heads that are not Muslim, that are from the Middle East, right? So see that how I'm talking about, I don't really 100% know about it, but if I went over there and I learned the culture, I would know more about it then. And then when I come back to America, I'm like, okay, I might not become Muslim now, but at least I can have more respect for those people. At least I can have more of an understanding for those people, as opposed to what I'm being fed through the media. And it also helps you to treat people differently, because now it's like, okay, I've ate with these people, I've talked with these people, and of course, there's bad people everywhere. There's bad people in all parts of the world, right? So sometimes we have these views of, oh, black people are like this, or white people are like that, or whatever, whatever. And I'm not saying that those experiences you've had are not real. They probably are real, just like racism is real. But however, when we expand ourselves to other networks and other parts of the world, it helps to expand our views of people. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, especially when it comes to law enforcement, because if you are going and you're policing people that you are not comfortable with, that you have not been around, that you have not been raised around, how will you then feel comfortable and safe to be able to police those people if you're not used to that? And if you've already been fed these narratives that these people are automatically dangerous, right? Granted, some of them might be, but if you're assuming that majority of them are like that, even when they're not, that becomes problematic. And even if it doesn't come, even if it's not when it comes to danger, but just interacting with those people and talking with those people, if you have nothing in common, or at least if you don't know how to interact with them because you've never really been around them, how can you police them, right? So they don't trust you and you don't trust them. So this becomes a problem. I don't want to get too much into that because that's a whole nother topic, but I just want to talk about all of that's why it's important for us to expose ourselves to different cultures, different backgrounds. We don't have to necessarily be close friends with them. We don't have to necessarily live in the same areas as them. I don't think that it's necessary for us to force ourselves to be friends with people that we naturally just are not compatible with. However, I think that it's important that we at least are cordial and we at least are respectful of one another's differences, right? Okay. And then last thing, because I know I'm getting over time, I don't want this to be too long because I can talk for a very long time, is new beginnings. Sometimes in your 20s, you're traveling, you may go to a different place, you may say, wow, I don't want to live in Detroit anymore. I want to move to Chicago, or it may be much further. I don't want to live in New York City anymore. I want to go to LA. Or I want to go to Texas, whatever. Or it could even be overseas. There have been people who lived in America and they've moved overseas because they got an opportunity over there. Maybe they traveled there or they spoke to somebody over there and they were able to go there for school or whatever, and it opened up new possibilities, and they're like, wow, I never thought that I would be living in Europe. I never thought that I would be living in Africa. So it's so important to also travel for that reason, because you may be able to find your spouse in a whole nother state or a whole nother country. You may be able to start a whole nother family, or maybe you already have a family but you want to raise them in a better environment, so you pick up your stuff and you move to a better environment, right? So it also can create new beginnings. Sometimes we could be in a place where we have had so much negative experiences where we were raised and where we grew up, so we have to kind of get up out of there, out of that negativity, and go to another place. Obviously, you have to work on yourself. You have to heal too, because even if you leave and go to somewhere else, you can still be taking those same problems to a new place. However, even if you grow and you stay in the same negative environment, it's affecting you, then it's probably time for you to start thinking about, okay, where is it that I should be going next, right? So new beginnings are great. Obviously, like I said earlier, calculate risk. That doesn't mean that you just quit your job today and just get up and just run to LA. I'm not saying that. Obviously, you want to research, you want to look into what you can do. But at the same time, I am a firm believer that if you allow other people to keep holding you back, or even yourself, and you know that deep down in your heart you're being called to go elsewhere, then you need to go. You may not fully understand why. You may not fully have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, but at least you have prepared to some extent to where at least when you go out there, you're not like desolate, you don't know what to do. Obviously, it's going to be challenging. You're going to a new place. It's not easy, but at least you're like, okay, at least I did it. I did it in my 20s. I think 20s is a great time to do it because a lot of people, they may not be married by then, especially if it's in your early 20s. You may not have children yet. So now it's like you kind of only have to focus on yourself as opposed to you having a child or being married, and it's like I can't just up and leave whenever I want to, right? So that's why I also encourage you to do it in your 20s, because not only is it good for your development as you're getting older into adulthood, but also because you tend to have less responsibilities, and it tends to be a little more forgiving when you kind of make mistakes in your early 20s. I'm not saying to go out there and be wild. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, say like if you move somewhere, you realize, oh, I don't really like this probably wasn't a good idea, I gotta go back home. But at least you're young, you're 21, and you can kind of do that. But when you're like in your 30s and you have a family and you did that, it's a whole different experience now. So this is your time to kind of like explore and see the world for what it really, really is. Obviously, you be safe. Make sure you go to the Department of State. Look at the places that are at high risk to travel. not every place is safe to travel. I'm not saying that that should stop you, but at least you should know where you're going. And to, like, right now, the Dominican Republic seems to be having a lot of problems, so I wouldn't suggest to go there. I wouldn't suggest to probably go parts of the Middle East, not because it's the Middle East, but because there's some turmoil going on in certain parts of those areas, probably also in Africa and even some parts of America, right? So we just have to be careful when we are putting ourselves out there as well, especially if you're a woman traveling by yourself. So if you're going to travel, make sure that you let people know, I'm going to be at this place for this long. This is where I'm going to be staying, just in case something happens to you. Make sure you read online if you're going to be flying, what kind of documents you need before you get there. Make sure you give yourself enough time. If the flight leaves at 6 a.m., make sure you get there at like maybe 3:30 or 4 a.m. I'm just using hypothetical stuff. Just make sure you're prepared. Make sure you have all your stuff packed. Make sure that you have everything together so that when you get out there, you don't you're not kind of stranded. Make sure you bring extra money, not just cards, but also cash. Make sure that if you're going to go overseas, you're bringing those money belts or those different things that you can use to conceal your money. Make sure you're not, being too obvious when you go to certain places that you're not from there. And make sure you don't go out there and just start drinking and just having all sorts of wild experiences and you don't really know where you're at, and if something happens to you, you're not in a familiar place. So all these things you have to think about when you're traveling. So I want people to be safe, but I also don't want people to be so hesitant to go just because they never had anybody in their family travel or because they hear things on the news or whatever. So take care, guys. I'm gonna go, and I hope that this video has been helpful to somebody. But yeah, I can't wait to travel again. I love to travel. It's just a matter of having the money. Like I've heard a quote. It said, "If money wasn't an issue, you'll never see me," because I would always be traveling. And I hope that one day my life will reflect that I will be able to travel the world continuously and explore the world and be in the environments that I would love. I also would like to go to the South Pacific, like the Philippines, the Fiji, all that stuff. So beautiful, so beautiful. And parts of Asia as well. Yeah. So take care, guys. Oh yeah, and then also language. I didn't even mention that, but learning languages. Maybe if you travel a lot, you'll be able to learn new languages, and that's really helpful if you learn new languages as well. So that's another part of it. But there's so many other. You can watch so many videos on here about traveling. So this is just kind of just get you thinking. Just get you thinking about it and seeing the world differently, especially when it comes to Black people and sometimes we're very limited in the way that we see the world, and we are not very always cultured, not because we don't want to, because we are told that we can't or that we don't need to, or we're not even taught it at all. So I just want to kind of put that out there. As a Black woman, I love to travel. I love to travel. And I'm not gonna let that stop me from going to places. Yeah, even though I wasn't raised to travel, but I'm gonna do it anyway because that's what I feel called to do. So take care, guys, and have a good day. Bye.